What's up, everybody? Derek here, and I am down on the creek today. It's a little bitty tiny creek, but it made me start to think about things that I wish I would have learned a long time ago when I was out creek fishing, because I have been creek fishing for a long time, pretty much most of my life. And there's some things that I have learned, and these are the things that I wish someone would have told me about creek fishing so I could have gotten better a lot quicker. And the things that I've learned, one of the main ones is that it's not always easy. I don't get skunked all the time at the creek, but the creek, if you're a bass fisherman, crappie fisherman, sometimes you go out there and you get zeroed. You get just skunked. You get beat down by those fish. You're searching, you're working, you're just beating the bank out, just trying to catch any fish you possibly can, especially lake fishing. Current fishing is a little bit different, but the creek allows you to get back to a place, as long as it's not like 10 degrees outside and it's really super tough. The creek will help you build back your confidence so you can get back to the other styles of fishing that you really want to be doing. So creek fishing is very beneficial because it not only helps you kind of get grounded, being in the outdoors, exploring, walking up and down a creek, going up and down the banks, trying to find those fish. Well, you can catch bigger fish in a creek too. Here in Texas where I'm at, it's nothing to go find a 5-6 pound bass in there. There's big catfish. There's crappie even. There's so many fish you could be fishing and finding the fish in the creek. And those fish, if you're near a lake, they're getting in that creek, because a creek can have warmer water than the lake a lot of times. But when you're creek fishing and you're in something that's got current like it's got behind me, that's where those fish are going to be a lot of times. You find them just about everywhere. You can find them. You can find them in the current. You can find them in the drop-offs. But the thing you've got to figure out is you've got to see what lures work the best those days. You got to throw certain lures, tie on different ones, whether it's a spinner or a crankbait, or maybe those fish are just nipping at the backs of those and you aren't getting the hookups that you want. You really got to slow down. So sometimes on a creek, you got to slow down to catch the fish. But not only that, creek fishing can be tough. It can be super tough, and you got to have a lot of patience. And a lot of times, people that I've come across aren't catching nothing, and I'm just tearing them up. And there's one reason for that. The people are fishing way too big of lures. Now, a 3/8 ounce spinnerbait, which is pretty basic for bass fishing, can be too big for a creek a lot of times, because those minnows in those creeks can be little bitty things, and you're throwing out a big, flashy, vibrating lure, rattle traps, big worms. A lot of times, if you downsize, you can start catching those smaller fish. And the cool thing about catching those smaller fish in a creek is the bigger ones might be eating exactly the same thing those other ones are keying on. There could be hatches going on with larvae and minnows that are starting to spawn out. And there could be just certain things going on in that fishing food chain that you really don't know about and you don't notice. And they're smaller than the lures that you're actually fishing with. So it takes a lot of patience, a lot of time, but fishing in a creek can be a lot of fun. It can be really rewarding. And a lot of the people that are the best at fishing that you see, whether they're professional tournament fishermen and bass fishing, crappie fishermen, bluegill fishermen, guys that are just always on the fish and always tearing them up, have learned the experiences of how to fish and what fish key on, the biology behind fishing, the food chain behind fishing. There's so many variables with the overcast skies, but the thing that helps with creek fishing is if you can find that current, you can find those fish most of the time, because they're not going to act like normal fish that you would find somewhere else where the water's colder, because the water, when it's moving, will be warmer. Depending if you live way up north, then it can still ice over the rivers and lakes and everything else. But typically, those fish in the creek will bite more likely than fish in other places. But those are just some of the small little nuances and little keys that you want to focus on when you're creek fishing, whether it's a little bitty lure, little bitty wax worm or larva or something, to a beetle spin, to a crankbait, to a hellgrammite. You got to learn the biology and how those fish relate to current and structure and everything else, and then you can take that same knowledge that you've learned and start applying it to bigger bodies of water, bigger rivers, bigger creeks, bigger lakes, and you can take it out there and you can find those fish. You can figure out what they're doing those certain times of the year. But that's what I do when I go creek fishing, and I like to go creek fishing to build my confidence back when I do go out there and have those tough days of fishing. And if I want to get on those fish, it builds my confidence back so I can throw those bigger lures. I don't know, it's just a good change up. Plus, I grew up fishing for bluegill down on the creek, being on the creek and catching fish. And it's kind of cool to step back and do what you did as a little kid, just to kind of remember and the nostalgia of it and just have a good time. Because creek fishing, especially if you got kids, taking them to a creek can be a lot of fun. But thanks for watching, you guys, and subscribe if you haven't already. Like this video if you liked it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.